Hey guys, welcome back to RCDiesel channel for part 5 of the 8.7 liter Iveco engine. I'm just warming up the truck here before I head off to the shop. Really appreciate you guys all sticking along with me through this. It's been quite a process, and I haven't even posted half of what it's taken to arrange the parts and get all this stuff going so that I can put this engine together. It's been a long process, I'll tell you. But, you know, I'm out of time. The guy's getting kind of grumpy. It's been sitting too long, so I don't have time to do all the intricate videoing. I'm going to have to move a little quicker through this one. I think this will be the last video. In the next day or two, maybe 3 days, depending on how much trouble I have. But I should be able to have, in this episode 5, I should be able to get the engine back together, back in the tractor, get it running, coolant flush. I got to do a coolant flush yet, and kick that thing out. So hopefully we can finish it. But I've got a lot of different things I've been working on in the meantime, and it's just, I'll explain some of that probably a little later, but I'll see you at the shop here. I've been working on this Iveco motor. Oh, I can't wait till I get that thing shoehorned back in here. This has been a big project. I fixed up the crankcase breather, and I don't even know where my last video was, where I left off, but I got the rockers on, I set the valves. Injectors are all wired up. Fancy zip tied all these. It's interesting that the original ties were to these injector pipes. Usually they don't do that because these things pulse quite a bit, but that's the way it was. That's the way I put it back. I tried to do it with double zip ties so that they're spaced away so the wires can't rub on the pipes. Yeah, and then I filled this thing up with oil. So now I'm ready to crank it over and bleed it. I'm gonna just crank it until I get oil coming up through all these oiling areas here. That's why I have this so dry right now. I want to be able to see where all the oil is coming through, and I want to be very, very sure that everything is oiling the way I want to see it. And of course, you're not even a mechanic if you're not doing this with some kind of jerry-rig monkey business here. The batteries are not very good for this tractor, so I just found a couple laying around. They're shot too. Well, I thought this one must be good. It's got a check mark on it. White check mark. Must be good, but no, they're terrible. But with the booster pack, boy, does that ever make a difference on cranking. So, as you can tell by the oil here, I cranked it a little bit already. And, man, that, oh, where is it? Oh, I lost the oil pump. Oh, yeah, it's in behind the cover here. It's on this side. That oil pump, that thing with the grease in there, she sealed up like right now. And it only cranked for maybe like 3 or 4 seconds, maybe 5 seconds, and I already had oil shooting out the supply line to the turbo. That's that guy there. I left this cap off on purpose because once the oil filter is filled with oil, that's the first place it's going to come out. And I wanted to see if I had oil pressure there because I don't actually have a gauge on here. There's no real convenient place for me to plumb in. Well, I mean, I could have gone in behind here and stuff, but my electrical hoses are in the way, electrical wires, battery cables, so this was just easier. Everything checked out so nice on this engine. I already know it's gonna have oil pressure, so that's all I was really worried about, was to make sure it gets to the top. All right, let's get our chooching here. Boy, what a difference. You can sure tell when that booster pack kicks on and off. Oh, man. Alright, so we got oil coming out of that cam bearing, so that's good. Got a little bit of oil starting to show in between. It was just pouring out of these rollers, so that's really nice to see. A little bit coming here. Got a little bit coming there, a little bit there, so starting to look pretty good. We're getting pretty close to... I just want to do it a little bit more, but I think at this point now I'm going to put that cover on there so that we're not dripping everywhere like that. But we definitely have oil pressure, so that's awesome. Well, this thing's all mad at me now. Overheated. got too hot. Starter's not even hot. It's just like barely even warm. But I got oil up here everywhere where I need it, so I'm gonna dump a little bit of oil over all the valves and everything and put the top together. Well, that's it for today. We got oil up to the top, injector harness is in, put the high pressure fuel pump on, the rocker box on, valve covers on, our lines are all hooked up. We got the wiring harness run for the injectors, the ECM down there bolted on. I would put this cover on, but I'm just waiting for my bolts to come. I ordered new bolts for this and gonna get that done. What else did I do? Threw that drive pulley on right here. So that's it for today. Oh yeah, I had to put this on too because I was leaking oil out of there when I was running it, or not running it, but cranking it over. It's probably worth mentioning 17 liters is the crankcase capacity, and it took 28 liters to fully bleed the entire oil system and then top it back up again. So it's full. That was 28 liters. So yeah, there's an extra 10 liters of oil stuck inside the oil cooler and all the lines everywhere and all that stuff. I guess that would include the oil filter. And so when you change the oil on this motor, there's about 8 or 9 liters that still stays in the motor of old oil. That seems like a lot, but that's what it is. So that's it for today. I'm going home. I'm tired. It's about 8:30 and gonna eat some supper and kick my feet up for a bit and go to bed. And in the meantime, I've been cruising away on this. I got the exhaust manifold bolted on, that little tin shield in behind there. We got our motor mount, or motor lifting brackets there and here bolted on. Finished bolting on the intake manifold, grid heater relay, bunch of little stuff on this side, another bracket along here. So this engine is very close to ready to put on. I forgot to order a thermostat, and I need a new thermostat in order to put the thermostat, well, I mean, I got this big housing here that's got to go on the front, but it covers the thermostat housing on that side, so I got to put the thermostat housing on before I can put that mount on. So I'm kind of ran out of work on the front of this thing. Got a few brackets and stuff that can go on the side yet, but I think I might wait to do that until it goes on the tractor. We'll see. First, I'm gonna tackle these damper plates though. I've been fooling around with this damper plate here for a while. The springs are all busted. It's all falling apart. This is all loose. So I ordered a new one. The new one is really different. So I've been checking part numbers and double checking and triple checking, and yeah, it looks like they just updated it. So this is an updated version of this old one that didn't last. They got the same spread on the bolt patterns and everything here, so it should all work anyways. So good, I'll get that bolted on there. All right, mounted the air conditioning and alternator bracket, put the alternator on, welded that guy up there, so that's fixed. And I think I'm ready to bolt this thing into the tractor. We got that new updated heavy duty damper plate in the back here, that torsional damper. I don't think there's anything left to do now except for put them in there. I'm running out of parts. Wow, I still got lots of parts to put on. I got all that stuff and all that stuff and all that stuff, but most of that is just bolt on to the outside kind of stuff. Getting close, getting close. There it is, engine's back in the tractor. I gotta say, I am a big fan of the engine mounts on this thing. The rear mounts just kind of wedge themselves down in there. The motor is sandwiched between the frame on both sides, and those mounts on the frame are angled like this, and then the motor mounts are angled like that and like that as well. So as you drop that motor down, it just kind of finds its place and settles right in, and it pulls and pushes the motor right where it needs to go until it sits right down in the bottom of the pocket. Super nice. And then with the dampener off, you got all kinds of room here to do up that front mount. And you just put your 6 bolts in there. Once you get that at the right level, tighten them up, let the weight off, and done. This engine is easy enough to do. I didn't video it, but I put this in myself with the forklift because it's that easy. Super nice, super nice. I would have liked to have put the turbo on and the lines on while it was sitting on the jack stands before, but unfortunately I wanted to use these lifting brackets, and the turbo was just right in the way for the chain here, so turbo's got to go on after just to make it more convenient to drop the engine in and chain everything all up to do that. So, oh well, you win some and you lose some. So now we got about 18,000 lines that all have to get rerouted. I got a lot of stuff tied up out of the way there. Same on the other side. Got some harnessing and some other different stuff. All has to get routed back in. There are all kinds of lines and different stuff down in there. So, anywhoos, let's get at her. Time to bolt on this brand spanking new whole set turbo. So turbos are often somewhat of a generic part. This is an HX52W, and they are used on all kinds of different stuff, Volvo motors and Iveco motors, different applications. So when you get them, they're never clocked right. And what I mean by that is the outlet is facing the wrong way. The exhaust is often facing the wrong way. Your oil supply and oil drains are facing wrong. And on turbos, that's always adjustable. And this is a whole set turbo, and they use the V-bands most of the time. So these are real easy. They just have these big V-band clamps. They almost look like a giant hose clamp. You loosen those off, and once they're loose, you can actually move this however you want to move it. Now, the problem with this one is this needs to be straight down, and that's as far as I can go because I'm running out of room with the wastegate line. There, you see how short that line is there. If we go look at the old one, right here on my messy workbench, that's quite a long line they have on here. So that's just part of swapping stuff. I'm gonna have to take this line off and go put it on that one. Like that. That's better. And I know that I feel a little more comfortable about moving this side around. We're going to get this turbo drain, oil drain situated in the right spot and get our drain line hooked up. That'll be fun. Clocking this stuff all in the right direction can be a real challenge, making marks and this, that, and the other if you're going to do it that way. So the way I do it, very simple. The drain line is typically steel rigid line, and that's what determines where that center cartridge has to sit. So I put that turbo drain in, tighten it on the bottom, tighten it on the top. This one has a little bit of a flexible hose in there, so it can move some, but principally it's still the same. Once you get it all tightened up top and bottom, just give them a couple of wiggles. Make sure everything is sitting all happy where he wants to sit. And then you can go ahead and tighten up the V-band for the cartridge. And then next thing you do, before you do anything else, is give that thing a spin and make sure it spins free and easy and that it's not touching anywhere. Because every time you touch this, you're throwing everything off center a little bit, and you want to make really sure you don't have a clearance problem after you're done fooling with it. So now it's tightened, everything's good. Now we just have to clock this one. Just getting ready to throw the turbo supply line on. As always, get your little oil can and fill that turbo up with oil. Like that. Give them a little spin. You want to pre-lube those bearings so that when you first start it up, it's not running dry. Especially if you're doing a rebuild like this where you don't prime the oil system ahead of time. We did on this one, so it's only going to run for a second or two before it gets full oil pressure. But if you ever are doing one of these jobs where you're putting a turbo on and you haven't done that and you're going to crank it or run it until it has oil pressure, it's very, very important, especially on a new turbo. Yeah, I should probably clarify that a little bit for some of those that aren't necessarily turbo gurus. 99% of the turbos that I work on in the industries that I work in, namely being ag and construction, the turbos are what are called journal bearing turbos. And journal bearing turbos use the same bearing principle for that shaft in there as what an engine uses, where it has full floating shaft on bearing shells. It relies on oil pressure for lubrication to create a pillow of oil between the shaft and those shells, so that the shaft is never actually touching those shells. Now, this becomes really important because turbos spin at tens of thousands of RPM. And so if they don't have correct oil pressure, they can do a lot of damage to those bearings really, really fast. So what spins the turbo is airflow through it. So as soon as you start to crank the engine, it begins to suck air in and push air out as the pistons are pumping. And that airflow creates an opportunity for this turbo to spin. And when you're cranking it, it might be spinning, you know, this fast. Not very much. And just like a regular engine with the crank, if there's any oil on those bearings at all, you can crank it a ton and not destroy anything. And that's the same thing here. But as soon as that engine would fire up, this thing gets a blast of air and it goes woo, and it just really starts spinning up like crazy. And at that point, the RPMs are very, very high on it already, even at an idle. And if you don't have enough oil in those bearings to support that, they'll eat themselves really quick. And that's why it's so important to pre-charge that chamber so that when it starts up for the first time, it's full of oil. And as that shaft is spinning, it's drawing new oil in until it has full oil pressure to actually float. It's the best chance you have at keeping it 100%. Oh, it's slowly coming together, getting ready to throw the rads on. Of course, they needed a cleaning. So I blew them all out, and yeah, they were a little bit dirty. And I walk in here and see this thing all coming together. It should be encouraging, almost running, but somehow it just isn't. I've been fighting this tractor since there was still snow on the ground. My customer's getting pretty ornery. He's very angry, and somewhat rightfully so. It's been a long time sitting here, but being an Iveco, you don't just roll up to your local Walmart and get parts for these things. You're always waiting a week, week and a half for everything. And of course, in the meantime, I got to do other jobs, and so then when the parts come in, I can't necessarily get right back on it instantly. I got to finish whatever I'm doing first and stuff like that. We had issues with the valves. 6,000 hours, it needed a full set of valves already. Those valves were almost $5,000. And so I tried to get the machine shop to make a way to reuse the old ones, but no, when they're shot, that was it. They weren't kidding, so to order new valves, and then waited a week and a half or whatever for those, and then we wound up being short, and we had to wait another week and a half, and so the head sat at the machine shop for 2 months while this tractor tied up my shop and I couldn't get nothing done. What a pain. Oh man. It's just a lot of anxiety on this one now because of all the trouble that I've gone through to get this together, and the guy's all mad, and I just don't like that. That's very personal for me. Just try to keep everybody happy, but that's an impossibility, as bad as you want it. Anyways, we're getting close. I got a few hoses and lines left to put back on. I've already run it and got, or not run it, I've cranked it over, got oil to the top before I dropped it in here. I've got all the stuff in the back, the drive shaft and everything is all on. Shields are on in behind there. Cooling package is on, fan and all that stuff. I gotta get this wiring harness strung into there yet, and all tied up and connected in all its fancy places. And then I got my air pipes and my rad hoses and a couple other little coolant lines and stuff. And then I should be able to run it. So, Lord willing, we'll have it running today yet. Well, I think I got this. Everything is together. All those lines and hoses and pipes and clamps and wiring harness and oy. It's still not done. I got a couple little stuff like this yet that I got to take care of. But, well, I have to put the hood on, the shocks and all that stuff. But I got to give this thing a coolant flush and everything else. So, it's together enough to run it. I've been pouring some water in there. I'll top it up a little bit more yet. Well, praise the Lord, she runs pretty nice. Just doing a coolant flush right now because this cooling system was all full of oil with the coolant. So it seemed like we had two different problems. At first, when I started to drain the coolant, I found the oil in there. I said, oh, so it's the oil cooler. And they are a common failure point, so I did replace the oil cooler. And then when I pressure tested, I still had all kinds of water coming out the pan. So, seems like that was only part of the problem. The other problem was the liner O-rings. But liner O-rings can't put oil into the coolant. They can put coolant in the oil, but not oil in the coolant. So we definitely had two different problems. So now I gotta do a coolant flush, and then I can put the hood back on. I gotta charge the AC up. And I think we're done. Well, I got it all nice and heated up. Now I'm flushing it with the garden hose. See it running out of the reservoir there a bit. Pretty nasty stuff. Well, let's check it out. Oh yeah, that's nice and clean now. Perfect. Well, there we have it. This blue machine is finished. Iveco is done. It was a little bit of a nightmare, but that's okay. Got this one back together. Learned a lot about these Ivecos. And you know, the service manager at one of the dealerships told me that as far as he knows, they're the only shop in southern Manitoba that can time these things. He said pretty much every engine that they've ever had into their shop that they didn't rebuild themselves has had pistons hitting the valves because they weren't timed right. Cam wasn't timed right. This thing runs pretty nice. If it doesn't blow up on the way home, then I guess there's two shops that can time them now.